Today we live in the United States of the Democrat Party. What do you think of it? Massive inflation, gas prices through the roof, diesel prices, which costs all of us an enormous amount of money since all 18-wheelers use diesel, lack of baby formula, limited amounts of meat available, and that price is going through the roof, lack of fertilizer to grow wheat and corn, empty shelves, supply chain problems. This is what happens when you have a political party that has been radicalized, the Democrat Party, that embraces these various American Marxist movements and is at war with our economic system, with our private sector, and with the American people themselves, with open borders and trying to change citizenship. And no, I'm not one of those Putinoids who, in the media, in the various parties, the Republican Party and Democrat Party, who seem to believe that if only we wouldn't help the Ukrainians to survive against the onslaught by the Russians, that somehow these things would be addressed by our government and be improved. That's idiocy. That's insanity. The people in charge of our government would continue to do exactly what they're doing, which is undermining the prosperity, success, representative nature of this republic. And I want to talk about the courts briefly. And by the way, later tonight we have two great guests, Ken Starr and Senator Mike Lee, two constitutional experts. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution says, among other things, and many things, that the executive shall faithfully execute our laws. It's called the Faithful Execution Clause or the Take Care Clause. The executive is under a duty to faithfully execute the laws of Congress and not ignore them, even if they disagree with them. And I'll go even a step further. George Washington made the point himself. He said, "It is my duty to see the laws executed. To permit them to be trampled upon with impunity would be repugnant to that responsibility." Two presidents, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, were both impeached by the House, at least in part, for violating their Take Care Clause duties. Because as you can imagine, if the executive isn't going to enforce laws that have been passed and signed by the executive, perhaps a prior president, then we have complete anarchy. Abraham Lincoln looked at this section of the law, too. And he said about the Constitution, the Faithfully Execute Clause, in 1838, in a speech at the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, Illinois, "When I so pressingly urge a strict observance of all the laws, let me not be understood as saying there are no bad laws, but I do mean to say that although bad laws, if they exist, should be repealed as soon as possible, still, while they continue in force, for the sake of example, they should be religiously observed." Washington, Lincoln, the founders. So what am I talking about? We currently have 6 Supreme Court justices in one state or another of extremis. Samuel Alito, the author of the first draft involving Roe v. Wade and Casey, he and his family have been in hiding. Other justices have had to have special security. And the security has been provided by, among others, the governor of Virginia and the governor of Maryland. Where has the Department of Justice been and the FBI been in the early stages of this onslaught against the justices? Where have they been? They've been AWOL. A Department of Justice that throws all its resources at people parading and trespassing on the lawn of the Capitol building. I'm not even talking about those who were violent, on the lawn of the Capitol building, and have treated these people in a horrendous manner. Many of them still in jail without having an actual hearing. That's Supreme Court. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's actually a federal law that compels the Biden administration and his appointees to act. That's what I'm talking about the Faithfully Execute Clause. And to fail to faithfully execute these laws, particularly under conditions like this, is an impeachable offense. It's been done before. Presidents have been impeached for failing to faithfully execute the law. I'm not talking about, oh, look at this word in a phone call discussion with Ukraine. No. This is black and white. This is actual law. 18 U.S. Code 1507, picketing or parading. I brought this up a week or so ago. Others have repeated it, and it needs to be underscored. Whoever, with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice. Not Chuck Schumer and his politics and so forth. The administration of justice, or with the intent of influencing any judge, juror, witness, or court officer in the discharge of his duty. Pickets or parades in or near a building housing a court of the United States, or in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge, juror, witness, or court officer, or with such intent uses any sound, truck, or similar device, or resorts to any other demonstration in or near any such building or residence, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. That is exactly what's happening to 6 targeted justices appointed by Republicans. Now, I should mention, after Roe v. Wade was handed down 49 years ago, and since the Casey decision in Pennsylvania, there weren't pro-lifers picketing, parading, violating federal law in the homes of the justices who ruled, in my view, the wrong way. And we don't have that sort of thing every time one side wins and one side loses, whether it's Obamacare or anything else. The reason this law is in place, because it's not free speech to intimidate justices. It's not free speech to try and coerce an outcome. Nancy Pelosi, she gave it up the other day. She said, yes, she supports these protests because if they can get the justices even to change the quote-unquote harshness of this first draft, it would be important. So we know what their objective is. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the whole conga line of Democrats in Congress and in the media are demanding that this mob, this permanent mob that the Democrats seem to have in place, where they signal them with language, with outrage, and could in fact create violence, and have in the past, like in 2020. This permanent mob is being used to try and pressure the Supreme Court. It is a disgusting outrage. The court is supposed to be independent. And when they do find the perpetrator who leaked, I guarantee you the left will want to have a ticker tape parade for that individual. They won't care if they're disbarred or not. They'll be viewed as some kind of great civil rights leader. And then the other day, the Senate said it wanted to codify Roe versus Wade. They came up short, 51-49. Every Democrat voted for this except for Manchin. But that's not what they voted for. The Roe decision has 3 trimesters. That's what a trimester is. The first trimester, the mother has the say. The second trimester is quite ambiguous. The third trimester, that is before birth, the state has a specific interest in protecting a baby because the reasoning was, not constitutional reasoning, just reasoning was that at that point it's viable. Casey took it a step further. But what the Democrats in the Senate, all but one, supported wasn't Roe versus Wade. It wasn't even Casey. It was the most extreme, barbaric form of abortion possible. Abortion right up to birth. Right up to birth. There's no Supreme Court decision that says a state must honor such a viewpoint. What did this Supreme Court do? Nothing yet, but in its first draft, what would it do? It says, we have no role in this. There's nothing in the Constitution for us. You, the people, you, the states, you figure this out. They didn't ban abortion. They could have, under the theory of the left, right? They could have. They left it to the people to decide and the state legislatures to decide, as most cultural issues need to be decided. They didn't do what the New York Times said either, set the stage to outlaw interracial marriage. How absurd. The court specifically says in 3 different parts, and one part emphatically, we do not adjudge any other issue related to rights, none, that this is unique because it involves another human being. Therefore, in this specific, laser-focused decision, we reject the past decisions as being incorrect. It's up to the states and the people thereof. No woman in the United States who wants an abortion won't be able to get an abortion. They might have to travel to another state. It might be inconvenient, but so what? As I said the other day, we ship illegal aliens all over this country, 1,000 miles from the border, 2,000 miles from the border, buses, trains, planes. There's organizations out there. The government's doing it left and right. So this isn't about merely a woman's right, but the Democrats wanted abortion right up to a minute before birth. I wonder if the American people support that. The answer is no. Now, we don't leave these issues up to surveys and polls. The Supreme Court's ruling on the Constitution. If we left it up to surveys and polls, we wouldn't need a judiciary, and we wouldn't need lifetime appointees, now would we? But I noticed that the Democrat Party wants a result that it demands, whether the American people support it one way or the other. You know, when I was a young guy, getting a little old these days, I remember on public TV and other channels, they would show the magic of birth. The magic of birth. Now, if what we're talking about here is not a baby, but a choice, and by the way, the science tells us it's a baby, but if you have to dehumanize the baby in order to push your agenda, and if it's nothing but a choice, and there's only one person involved, and if it becomes an inconvenience, as the Secretary of Treasury basically said in testimony the other day, Secretary Yellen, look, you know, women want to get on with their work and so forth, and this can essentially be an inconvenience. That kind of a cold-blooded view, if it's not a human being, then I have a question to ask you, America. Why haven't we ever seen partial birth abortion on PBS or the Discovery Channel? What the Democrats voted for and wanted to impose on every corner of the United States, on every person in the United States. Why haven't we ever seen the process where the brain is sucked out of the baby's skull in order to crush it? And in the womb, it's turned around so it is removed feet first. Why don't we get to see that? Why is that censored? I mean, it's not a human being, it's not a baby. You know damn well why. Because it is a baby. And to believe what the left believes, you have to believe women aren't women, babies aren't babies, death isn't death. These are just choices and rights. The Democrat Party reminds me a little bit of Trotsky. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we've talked about American Marxism. But Trotsky sort of modified Marxism in a way. You know, Lenin, before he died after the Russian Revolution, said, Marx doesn't tell us how to govern. And so there were battles over that. Trotsky lost, and Stalin wound up assassinating Trotsky. Stalin argued for an all-powerful state party that would ensure the revolution and enforce it, and obviously eliminate those who would obstruct it. Trotsky believed in a permanent revolution, constant anarchy, constantly stirring the pot from the bottom up. Doesn't it kind of define the Democrat Party? Whether it comes to the border, whether it comes to the Supreme Court, whether it comes to inflation, the police, the military, they're in a constant state of revolution.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.